Supreme Commander Razik stood motionless before the holographic display, his four eyes widening with each passing second of the footage. "Play it again," he commanded, his voice carrying a tremor that made his subordinates exchange nervous glances. The recording flickered to life once more, showing a group of human soldiers scaling a sheer cliff face in the middle of a Category 5 storm. No safety equipment, no anti-gravity units, just bare hands and what appeared to be primitive rope systems. "Impossible," muttered Field Marshal Blixnack, his scaled skin shifting from its usual emerald to a pale mint, a sure sign of distress among the Centauri military elite. "Our atmospheric sensors confirmed wind speeds of 300 units. They should have been thrown off that cliff like leaves." Science Director Prell stepped forward, her crystalline data tablet trembling in her upper appendages. "That is merely the beginning, Supreme Commander. Observe the timestamp change." The footage jumped forward 12 hours. The same group of humans, now drenched but apparently unfazed, had set up what they called a base camp on a narrow ledge. They were Supreme Commander Razik leaned closer. They were making hot beverages and laughing. "Are they mentally impaired?" Admiral Zena asked from her hover seat, all 6 of her sensory tentacles coiled tightly, a sign of extreme agitation. No species can maintain psychological stability under such conditions. Prell cleared her throat, a habit she had unfortunately picked up from studying human broadcasts. These soldiers continued their mission for another 72 hours. They successfully infiltrated our supposedly impregnable mountain fortress, acquired their target data, and exfiltrated while stopping to rescue one of our security guards who had become stranded by the storm. The room fell silent. 20 of the Alliance's highest-ranking military commanders stared at the final footage. The humans were helping a terrified Centauri guard down the same cliff face, while singing something they called show tunes. "This goes against every combat doctrine in the known galaxy," Blixnack whispered. "You never compromise a mission for an enemy combatant. You never risk strategic advantage for 4. "For basic decency," Prell suggested, earning several disapproving looks. Supreme Commander Razik raised his primary hand for silence. "Show them the neural scans." The hologram changed to display a series of brain patterns. Prell pointed to the seemingly chaotic spikes of activity. These readings were taken from the human soldiers during the operation. Pay particular attention to the pleasure centers. Admiral Zena's tentacles went completely limp. They were enjoying themselves? During a suicide mission. More accurately, Prell corrected, they didn't consider it a suicide mission at all. Their confidence levels remained stable throughout. They viewed the entire operation as, and I quote from their communications, a refreshing training exercise. Razik sank into his command chair, its smart metal conforming to his agitated state. "Training exercise," he repeated numbly. "What do they consider an actual combat mission?" Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber, bypassing all security protocols, an act that would normally result in immediate molecular disbursement. "Supreme Commander, we have new footage from Sector 7. The hologram shifted again. This time it showed a different group of human special forces executing a space station breach in manual propulsion units that the Alliance's xenotechnologists had dismissed as primitive spacecraft maintenance gear. "They're using maintenance suits for combat drops." Blixnack's scales were now completely white. "Those things aren't even rated for combat." "That's not the worst part, sir," the aide said, his voice quavering. They're playing something called the final countdown over all frequencies while doing it." Supreme Commander Razik watched as the humans, propelling themselves through space with what appeared to be modified cleaning equipment, breached his most sophisticated defense station while broadcasting ancient Earth music. He made a decision that would change the course of the war. "Get me the Human Special Forces Command on a direct line," he ordered. "I believe it's time we reevaluated our position." Field Marshal Blixnack dared to ask, "Sir, what made you reach this conclusion?" Razik gestured to the hologram, where a human soldier had just used a food preparation device, something called a sandwich maker, to bypass a quantum-encrypted security door. "If this is how they improvise," he said gravely, "I don't want to see what they can do with actual military equipment." The room murmured in agreement, while in the background, the sounds of human laughter and Earth music continued to echo through their most secure military facility. 6 months earlier. Admiral Zena's official report of first contact with human special forces began with what she now recognized as a grossly inadequate threat assessment. Primitive projectile weapons, she had written. limited understanding of quantum physics. No psychic abilities, she would never make such a mistake again. The diplomatic vessel Eternal Harmony had descended through Earth's atmosphere with all proper protocols observed. They had even adapted their ship's external lighting to match what humans called Christmas colors, believing it would seem festive and peaceful. In retrospect, Field Marshal Blixnack commented during the subsequent inquiry, landing during a classified military exercise might have been suboptimal. The human compound had appeared primitive concrete walls, simple metal barriers, and what seemed to be decorative plants around the perimeter. The Eternal Harmony sensors detected only 57 human life signs, a minimal security detail by any civilized standard. "Welcome to Fort Ridgeway Advanced Training Center," the human commander had greeted them through their universal translator. "Though I should mention you're currently in a live fire zone." Science Director Prell, watching from the ship's observation deck, had noted how the human soldiers maintained relaxed postures despite the presence of an alien vessel. Several were consuming hot beverages. One appeared to be solving a small puzzle cube. Then everything went wrong. A translation error converted "we come in peace" to "we come in pieces" simultaneously. A routine sensor scan was misinterpreted as weapons activation. The human's response would be studied in Alliance military academies for generations to come. They used the decorative plants as cover, Admiral Zena reported, her tentacles twitching at the memory. The plants weren't decorative. Nothing was what it appeared to be. Security footage showed the events in stark detail. Lieutenant Commander Ashley Reynolds had moved first, somehow covering 60 meters in under 3 seconds while carrying what appeared to be a full equipment load. She disabled the ship's primary sensor array, with Admiral Zena still had trouble accepting this part a thrown rock. The rock, Science Director Prell later explained, had been precisely shaped and weighted. She had apparently been using it as a stress relief toy, calculating its ideal aerodynamic properties while attending morning briefings. Captain Marcus Stone's team demonstrated equal disregard for conventional military logic. They converted the facility's sprinkler system into a sensor scrambling mist in under 2 minutes. Using maintenance manuals, Prell noted with a mix of horror and admiration. The Eternal Harmony's crew watched in stunned silence as Sergeant Diana Blackwood's squad turned the parking area into an improvised launcher. They weaponized their ground vehicle's combustion engines, Blixnack reported, created a magnetic pulse using jumper cables and car batteries. Who even thinks of that? But it was the human commander's next move that truly demonstrated the gap in their understanding of warfare. "Your ship's environmental systems are currently pumping in unfiltered atmosphere," he announced calmly over their own communication system. "I should mention that Sergeant Blackwood's famous 5-alarm chili was served in the mess hall today. We've all been eating it for lunch. You might want to adjust your air filters." The implications hit the alien crew like a tactical warhead. The humans had turned their own digestive processes into a chemical weapon, without violating a single interstellar convention. "They're laughing," reported a horrified sensor technician. "Their stress levels are actually decreasing." Within 7 minutes of the initial misunderstanding, the humans had effectively neutralized a starship's defensive capabilities using only the contents of their training facility. But what happened next defied explanation. "Once we corrected the translation error," Admiral Zena's report continued, "they immediately switched from combat to hospitality. Sergeant Blackwood actually offered to share the remaining chili. Several crew members accepted." The footage showed human and alien soldiers sharing a meal, examining each other's equipment, and exchanging what humans called war stories. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds was teaching junior alien officers how to throw rocks with tactical precision. "Their ability to transition from lethal efficiency to peaceful interaction is unsettling," Supreme Commander Razik noted in his classified addendum. "More disturbing is their tendency to treat combat as a form of entertainment." They recorded the entire incident for something called their holiday blooper reel. Security Chief Varex, his carapace still showing stress fractures from the event, submitted a separate observation. During the 7-minute engagement, human soldiers demonstrated 43 previously unknown applications of civilian technology as weapons. They referred to this as getting creative. Recommend immediate review of all civilian technologies in human possession, especially their cooking implements. The final footage showed Captain Stone presenting Admiral Zena with a small device. "For your next visit," he said, grinning. "It's called an air freshener. Trust me, you'll want it after chilly day." Their weapons technology may be primitive, Supreme Commander Razik concluded in his report, but their minds are something else entirely. They don't just think outside standard combat parameters. They don't seem to acknowledge that parameters exist. A note was quietly added to all Alliance military databases. Human special forces are to be considered Class 10 reality manipulators. Their ability to improvise should be treated as a form of tactical sorcery. Under no circumstances should they be allowed access to cleaning supplies, kitchen utensils, or recreational items. They will weaponize them. In the months that followed, Alliance observers noted that Fort Ridgeway had added a new sign at its entrance, home of the 1st Tactical Innovation Brigade, making the impossible hilarious since 2025. Admiral Zena kept the air freshener on her command console. As a reminder, Science Director Prell adjusted her camouflage field for the 15th time that hour. The human training facility sprawled before her observation post, deceptively simple in its layout. Her team had spent 3 weeks documenting human special forces training methods, and each new discovery made her question her understanding of biological limitations. Update on Subject Beta, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds, her assistant, whispered through their secure channel. She has been running for 6 hours straight, in the rain, while carrying a log. Initial assessment suggested this was a punishment detail. Prell's appendages twitched. Clarify assessment revision. She's teaching junior officers something called leadership by example. They appear to be singing. The recording devices captured the cadence echoing across the muddy training ground. 20 humans, each carrying loads that would strain a Centauri cargo lifter, running through adverse conditions while maintaining enough breath to sing. The psychological implications were staggering. A different observation team reported in from the facility's indoor training center. Subject Gamma, Captain Stone, is conducting what they call close-quarters combat training. Sir, he's blindfolded. Sensory deprivation training is not uncommon, Prell responded. No, sir, you don't understand. He's winning, against 4 opponents, using something called Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu while explaining proper technique. He just made a joke about their form. Prell accessed the video feed. Captain Stone, indeed blindfolded, was systematically dismantling his opponents while providing helpful tips on leverage and balance. He paused mid-throw to remind someone about proper hydration. Sir, another observer cut in, panic evident in their voice. The mess hall team needs immediate extraction. We can't watch anymore. Explain. Sergeant Blackwood is teaching advanced survival cooking. They're eating something called meals ready to eat from 20 years ago. Voluntarily, for training purposes. Prell felt her exoskeleton tighten with stress. Surely they have fresher options available. That's the point, sir. They're training to eat anything. The sergeant just said, and I quote, "These might taste like artillery shells wrapped in sadness, but they'll keep you fighting." The reports continued throughout the day, each more disturbing than the last. Humans conducting underwater knot tying competitions. Night navigation exercises without equipment. Something called stand-up comedy practice during extreme endurance tests. Sir, her primary assistant interrupted. You need to see the morning routine. The footage showed hundreds of human soldiers voluntarily waking before their sun rose, without orders, without supervision. They gathered in formation and proceeded to exercise while making jokes about their own suffering. They call it PT, the assistant explained. They do this every day. Some do extra sessions for fun. Prell's scientific detachment cracked slightly. Define fun in this context. We can't. Their brain scans showed genuine pleasure responses during activities that should register as torture. The afternoon brought new horrors. The observation team documenting the facility's training course reported multiple violations of known physical laws. Humans running up walls, crawling through electrified mud, solving complex mathematics while hanging upside down. Subject Delta, Private Sarah Martinez, just completed the obstacle course carrying another soldier, an observer reported. When asked why, she said, and I quote, "My battle buddy said they were tired, so I thought it would be more challenging this way." The psychological assessment team requested emergency rotation after witnessing the Wednesday afternoon training block. They're practicing failure, the team leader reported, voice shaking, intentionally creating no-win scenarios, and they're excited about it. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds was recorded explaining the concept to new recruits. When everything goes wrong, that's when humans go right. Anyone can follow a plan. We specialize in what happens when the plan meets reality and reality wins the first round. The breaking point came during the evening documentation. Captain Stone's team was conducting night infiltration drills using what appeared to be outdated gaming equipment. They've modified entertainment devices for tactical training, Prell noted in her report. The implications of a species that turns everything, including leisure activities, into combat preparation. A new transmission interrupted her documentation. Sir, the kitchen staff, they're having a competition. Explain. They're seeing who can create the most efficient field rations using only condiment packets and something called beef jerky. Sir, they're enjoying it. The winning team gets to design next week's confidence course. Prell's final report to Supreme Commander Razik was uncharacteristically brief. Human Special Forces treat adversity as entertainment, limitations as suggestions, and impossibility as a personal challenge. They are systematically training themselves to thrive in conditions that would break most species. Most critically, they appear to be having fun doing it. She added a personal note: their capacity for turning anything into a training opportunity suggests all previous tactical assessments are obsolete. A species that practices combat techniques while cooking dinner is operating on a different paradigm of warfare. The concluding footage showed Lieutenant Commander Reynolds teaching a class on improvised tools. She was demonstrating 30 different combat applications for a simple writing utensil. Remember, folks, she said cheerfully, anything is a weapon if you believe in yourself. Except an actual weapon that's just a tool. Your mind is the real weapon. The entire class laughed. The observers didn't sleep for 3 days. Supreme Commander Razik ordered the immediate classification of all human training documentation. This information would cause panic, he declared. No one would believe it anyway. In a secure vault beneath Alliance High Command, the videos remained. A reminder that somewhere, human special forces were probably figuring out how to weaponize that too. Science Director Prell burst into the High Command briefing room, her usual professional composure completely shattered. They are voluntarily ingesting poison, she announced, waving her data tablet frantically. Every morning, multiple times per day. Supreme Commander Razik looked up from his tactical displays. Clarify. The footage played on the main screen. Human special forces gathered around what the Alliance had previously classified as a water heating device. The dark liquid dispensing into their containers had initially been mistaken for a simple hydration ritual. Our biochemical analysis confirms it, Prell continued. This substance, coffee, contains a neural stimulant so potent it would be classified as a combat drug on 17 Alliance worlds. Admiral Zena's tentacles curled in horror. And they drink this voluntarily. Worse, Prell whispered. They have turned it into an art form. The screen showed Lieutenant Commander Reynolds at the machine, preparing what she called a triple-shot espresso. The measurements must be precise, she explained to a junior officer. The difference between tactical alertness and vibrating through solid walls is about 2 millimeters of liquid. Field Marshal Blixnack watched in growing terror as humans added various substances to their beverages. What are these modifications? They call them flavor enhancers, Prell explained. Sugar, cream, something called pumpkin spice that appears to have an almost religious significance. The footage continued. Captain Stone was demonstrating what he called the tactical coffee field preparation method, using nothing but a metal filter and hot water. Sometimes you have to improvise, he said, grinning. Remember, bad coffee is better than no coffee, but no coffee is better than surrendering. Serenade interrupted. We have new data from the afternoon observation. The screen shifted to show Sergeant Blackwood's team preparing for a combat exercise. They were consuming something even darker than standard coffee. What is that? Razik demanded. They call it Black Lightning, Prell said, her voice trembling. It appears to be triple brewed coffee using energy drinks instead of water. The room fell silent as they watched the effects. The human soldiers moved with impossible speed, their reaction times defying Alliance combat computers. More disturbing was their continued ability to make jokes while operating at such enhanced levels. Time to wake up and kick the impossible in the face, Sergeant Blackwood announced, her team responding with enthusiastic whoops. The aliens watched in horror as she performed complex quantum calculations while doing one-armed push-ups. The stimulant appears to improve their cognitive functions, Prell reported. They are capable of solving advanced mathematical equations faster while under its influence. Several have reported that they cannot properly function without it. Admiral Zena's command chair swiveled nervously. Are you suggesting they have deliberately addicted themselves to a performance-enhancing substance? Affirmative. They call it Monday. The footage showed a junior officer attempting to access the coffee machine before completing their morning training. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds intervened with what humans called a teaching moment. No coffee until you can disassemble and reassemble your equipment blindfolded, she said. Consider it motivation. The young soldier completed the task in record time. They are weaponizing addiction, Blixnack muttered, using chemical dependence as a training tool. A new alert flashed across the screen. The observation team at Fort Ridgeway was reporting an emergency situation. The coffee machine had malfunctioned. Observe their crisis response, Pearl said. The humans, faced with a morning without their stimulant, demonstrated unprecedented problem-solving abilities. Within minutes, they had converted standard field equipment into an impromptu brewing system. Sergeant Blackwood was using a tactical helmet as a filter. Necessity is the mother of caffeination, Captain Stone declared, supervising the operation. This is why we train for worst-case scenarios. Supreme Commander Razik watched as the humans celebrated their victory over equipment limitations. Update the threat assessment, he ordered. Any human special forces unit must be assumed to be operating at double their baseline capability. Triple if they have access to this coffee. Sir Prell added reluctantly, there's one more thing. They appear to have developed a ritual response to consuming the stimulant. After each cup, they say. The footage completed her sentence as 50 human soldiers shouted in unison, but first, coffee. The Alliance High Command sat in stunned silence, contemplating a species that had turned voluntary poison consumption into both a combat multiplier and a morale-boosting social activity. Well, Admiral Zena said finally, at least they can't make it any more potent. Prell's appendages twitched nervously. About that, we just intercepted plans for something they called Death Wish Coffee. The emergency evacuation of the command center was later described as unnecessarily dramatic, but no one wanted to take chances with a species that named their beverages after mortality. Supreme Commander Razik had prepared what he considered a perfect strategy. The Alliance would neutralize every known human advantage terrain sealed with energy barriers, weather control systems negating environmental factors, quantum dampeners preventing improvised weapons. Nothing can go wrong, he assured his command staff. We have accounted for every possible scenario. Admiral Zena's tentacles twisted anxiously. Sir, about their music. What about it? The tactical display lit up with multiple warnings. Human special forces had breached the perimeter, but the method was unexpected. Are they Field Marshal Blixnack blinked all four eyes rapidly. Are they dancing? Lieutenant Commander Reynolds and her team had synchronized their movements to something called staying alive, using the rhythm to predict and slip through gaps in the energy barrier timing. That is not possible, Razik declared. The barrier patterns are quantum random. They're saying it has a beat, reported a bewildered sensor operator. They've turned our security system into a dance track. Captain Stone's voice crackled over the command center speakers. Hope you do not mind, but we brought our own party playlist. This next one is a classic. The sounds of Thunder Road filled every communication channel. Sergeant Blackwood's team used the musical cover to mask their approach, somehow incorporating the song's tempo into their tactical movements. Sir, a panicked technician shouted. They are using our quantum dampeners as amplifiers. Razik watched in disbelief as human special forces converted his carefully planned containment zone into what they called an impromptu music festival. They had deployed something called party lights using modified signal flares. Who brings a music library to combat? Blixnack demanded. These humans, apparently Prell responded, frantically documenting everything. They say music improves combat performance, though I question their choice of Sweet Home Alabama for a breach maneuver. The situation deteriorated further when Private Sarah Martinez discovered the resonant frequency of the Alliance's force fields. Hey team, these barriers make a great baseline. The humans began incorporating the humming force fields into their music, creating what they called a sick beat. Their combat efficiency increased by 40%. They are using our own defenses as musical instruments, Razik said numbly. How do you plan for that? Admiral Zena's tactical display showed more concerning developments. Sir, Captain Stone's team has reached the Central Command Sector. They appear to be recreating something called Dance Revolution using our security floor panels. The footage showed human soldiers timing their movements to both avoid sensor detection and maintain what they called a perfect combo score. Several were critiquing each other's technique mid-infiltration. Lieutenant Commander Reynolds has breached the quantum mainframe, reported another officer. She is using interpretive dance to confuse the motion sensors. Reynolds' voice came through clearly. The security AI cannot predict what it cannot comprehend. Nobody expects tactical ballet. Sergeant Blackwood had meanwhile converted the facility's emergency alert system into what she called a sweet remix. The pulsing alarm beacons now flashed in time with something called back in black. Status report, Razik demanded, trying to maintain some control over the situation. Sir, we have lost control of environmental systems, now playing something called elevator music. Security barriers currently being used as synthesizers. And sir, they have accessed our gravitic controls. The command center staff watched as human special forces used altered gravity fields to perform what they called the greatest moonwalk of all time. Several were taking video with their tactical cameras. This is not warfare, Blixnack protested. This is entertainment. For them there appears to be no difference, Prell noted, still recording. They have achieved perfect tactical efficiency by treating combat as a performance art. Captain Stone's team had reached the facility's core, using their combat boots to tap out something called Morse code in rhythm with "We Will Rock You." The combination somehow shorted out the quantum encryption. Sir, a communications officer reported, they are requesting that we, and I quote, either surrender or at least give them a better beat to work with. They say our alarm systems are totally last century. Razik watched as Lieutenant Commander Reynolds conducted her team through a breach maneuver that doubled as a dance routine. Their timing was perfect. Their tactical positioning was flawless. And they had somehow taught the security drones to be backup dancers. Sir, Admiral Zena prompted, "Your orders." Before Razik could respond, the humans deployed their final surprise. They began broadcasting what they called their victory soundtrack through every speaker in the facility. "Is that Eye of the Tiger?" asked a junior officer. The combined human teams coordinated their final approach as if it were a choreographed performance. They breached the command center using moves that appeared to be borrowed from both Special Forces training and something called TikTok dances. "Please tell me someone is recording this," Private Martinez called out. "This is definitely going in the year-end highlight reel." Supreme Commander Razik stood from his command chair, dignity intact, despite the human special forces surrounding his position while performing synchronized tactical movements to Uptown Funk. "Commander Reynolds," he said formally, "I believe we should discuss terms." Reynolds paused mid-spin. "Great. But first, any requests? We have got a killer playlist for diplomatic negotiations." The Alliance surrender document was signed to the sounds of Sweet Victory, which the humans insisted was traditionally appropriate. They even taught some of the alien staff basic dance moves. Remember, Sergeant Blackwood announced to everyone, "War is hell," but that is no reason it cannot have a good soundtrack. In his final report, Supreme Commander Razik wrote, "Only we did not lose to their superior technology or tactical doctrine. We lost to their ability to turn everything, including defeat, into a celebration. How do you fight an enemy that treats battle like a party and victory like an excuse to dance?" The report was filed with a note that it should be read while listening to Another One Bites the Dust. The humans had insisted, for historical accuracy. 3 months after what humans now call the dance-off incident, Supreme Commander Razik found himself attending a joint training session at Fort Ridgeway. The sight of Alliance soldiers attempting to keep up with human special forces both amused and terrified him. Remember, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds called out to the mixed group, "Agility training is more fun with proper motivation." She gestured to Sergeant Blackwood, who activated what humans called their workout mix. Admiral Zena, observing from her hover chair, leaned toward Razik. "They even exercise to music. Is there anything they do not turn into entertainment?" "Paperwork," Captain Stone answered, appearing suddenly beside them. though we are working on that. Anyone want to learn what humans call desk chair races? The cultural exchange program had produced unexpected results. Alliance soldiers learned human combat techniques, while humans eagerly studied alien technology. The combination was concerning. Sir Field Marshal Blixnack reported, Private Martinez has taught our engineers 17 new uses for standard equipment. They are calling it life hacking. Science Director Prell maintained her research, though with less emphasis on covert observation and more on collaborative studies. Her latest report sat on Razik's desk. Humans appear to possess infinite capacity for adaptation through creative reinterpretation of challenges as opportunities. The evidence was everywhere. Alliance troops now participated in what humans called competitive training exercises, complete with scoring systems and victory dances. The humans had somehow turned military readiness into a multiplayer game. Your species, Razik said to Reynolds during a briefing, approaches warfare unlike any known civilization. Reynolds grinned. Oh, you have not seen anything yet. This was just our standard training protocol. We never even activated our advanced capabilities. The room fell silent. What Prell's appendages froze mid-note-taking. Sure. Did you think we would use our serious moves in a first contact situation? That would have been overkill. We were just having fun, keeping things casual. Admiral Zena's tentacles went completely limp. You mean all of this, the cliff climbing, the improvised weapons, the combat dancing? Basic stuff. Sergeant Blackwood chimed in, sipping her Black Lightning coffee. Wait until you see what we do when we actually try hard. Anyone up for extreme zero-gravity paintball? We just modified the rules for tentacles. Captain Stone nodded enthusiastically. And next week we are introducing the Alliance troops to something we call parkour, though we might need to requisition more safety mats and stretchers. Supreme Commander Razik considered the implications. His species had just signed a peace treaty with humans who treated their basic training like entertainment, and who apparently had even more impressive capabilities they had not yet revealed. Perhaps, he suggested carefully, we should focus on cultural exchange rather than combat training. Great idea, Reynolds beamed. We can start with our holiday traditions. Anyone want to learn about something called April Fool's Day? The resulting chaos required 3 emergency protocols and created 2 new Alliance regulations. The humans called it a success. In his final assessment, now displayed prominently in the Alliance Strategic Command Center, Razik wrote humanity's greatest weapon is not their strength, their technology, or even their inexplicable ability to turn everything into a training opportunity. It is their capacity to enjoy the impossible. Below this, someone, presumably Private Martinez, had added a note, but the coffee helps. The new Joint Special Forces Command Center, established at Fort Ridgeway, bore a simple motto where the impossible is probable and the improbable is fun. Alliance observers continued documenting human activities, though now officially and with less horror. Their latest report noted that human special forces had started a competition to find the most creative use of Alliance technology. The current leader had somehow turned a quantum communication array into what they called a disco ball. Remember, Lieutenant Commander Reynolds told a group of new Alliance recruits, the difference between humans and other species isn't that we can do the impossible. It's that we enjoy figuring out how to do it. She paused, then added with a wink. Also, we have not shown you our advanced coffee recipes yet. That is for graduate-level training only. The resulting nervous laughter from the Alliance soldiers proved that some lessons had been well learned, as did the new emergency protocols specifically addressing human beverage innovations. Supreme Commander Razik kept a coffee machine in his office, not to use it, but as a reminder, never underestimate a species that treats combat like a party game and considers the impossible just another Tuesday morning.